Good evening, Jeopardy fans, and welcome to episode number 42 of Hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel, presented by the JeopardyFan.com. Once again, I am Andy Saunders. If you'd like to interact with the panel, you can always use Hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel on Twitter. Now, you may ask, Andy, what happened to episode number 41? And I will say that is still in post-production. It is the pre-game interviews of the Humans versus Quanta match that took place in Chicago. I took some time before that match to interview Kristin Sausville, Alex Jacob, Ben Ingram, and Colby Burnett. It's a fun interview. You can look forward to seeing that in a couple of days once I actually get some time to put those together. But it will be a lot of fun. In case you did not know, humanity battled the computer to a 200-200 draw. It was quite an exciting matchup, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. At this point, I'd certainly like to introduce our panel. First up, we have the star, the big winner from the past season of 500 Questions, Steve Bahnaman. As you can see, the nice-looking Quonset hut.
Yeah, the curved walls are outside the bounds of my house, but I decided I had to do some upgrades with my money.
We also have five-time champion and defender of humanity, Kristin Sausville, member of the team who tied Quanta. Third up on our panel, Jerie Shaw. He joining us once again. Thank you. I'm sure has some thoughts. Were you watching Quanta? And finally, returning to our panel, she was on our online test special once again, Jerie Shaw. Thanks for joining us, Jerie. So, last week, Dan Feitel. Keith Williams had 3 coronaries. Probably took 5 years off his life.
Stay strong, Keith.
Yeah, so I have to say, we might as well open up talking about strategy. Wow, I mean, I definitely have to say, I'm surprised by it. What do you guys think of his betting?
Justin and I just watched the Monday game right before I logged on here, and at the end of it, we just kind of turned to each other, and I said, maybe he likes the adrenaline rush, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he would have to. It's, I hate to be that guy, but I mean, it's, yeah, like, Keith Williams is right, probably. I mean, there are sometimes categories where it would, you'd almost be a sucker not to do it because you're going to be 98%, but categories like the ancient world do not necessarily lend themselves to such confidence. But honestly, it's obviously not that he's sure he's going to get it and it's hubris or whatever. It's something different. Which the other thing though is that when you're in a relatively close match, it's often not that big of a deal. Like the amount that you're going to cost yourself by wagering a lot is not that high of a percentage. But like today, for example, was completely bonkers. So. Yeah.
He was only like what, $600 away from having her locked out. The bet that he would have to make was minimal. Like
yeah, 1201, I think.
Yeah, she would have to wager everything to catch him, and I don't know, letting her back in, that was a really interesting decision.
I'm going to say that his bet isn't in those situations, assuming rational opposition is not the worst bet he could have made.
Well, sure, he could have added that last $1. That would have been.
Well, I'm serious here. I mean, if you assume rational opposition would bet everything in the cases where he's bet all but $1. Therefore, assuming rational opposition, it's not the worst thing. However, assuming rational opposition is probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the zero wager also made no sense today. Right, like it only makes sense against Dan Feitel.
Yeah.
Like, which was weird because I don't know if
Which-
his opponent today would have seen him before.
Unless she
So
was the
it was-
opponent for last week, she wouldn't have. I mean, it was.
Yeah, which is possible, I guess.
Yeah.
Makes total sense
Jerie-
against Dan Feitel, though.
Yeah.
Like, it was absolutely the correct wager to make.
Yeah.
But
Jerie, what do you think of watching Dan as a?
Funny thing, I haven't actually watched Dan. I've read those episodes on J Archive, so it's a bit of a different experience. But I definitely did scratch my head a little bit when I got down to the end of the board there, where it shows what everyone bet. Yeah, certainly. But I don't know. I guess to me, because I'm such a casual viewer and I'm not a big trivia diehard, the big bets are always just really fun to watch. So
there is that. Like, it's more fun to see someone bet
Yeah.
a lot of money and win a lot of money for sure.
it's the blast.
Yeah.
How far do you think he'll go in the Tournament of Champions? You're welcome to recuse yourself, Kristin, by the way.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the fifth on that one.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I personally know how you feel because you were in Chicago and we were discussing it in Chicago. But
True.
I'm not going to ask you for your public opinion on this. But
Thank you.
the rest of you, how do you think he'll do in the Tournament of Champions?
I do not think he has been very dominant on the buzzer. I think his knowledge is really, really good. I don't know if he would suddenly become dominant on the buzzer. Obviously, practice helps. But you noticed, like, tonight he wasn't, like, clearing people out much at all. And, I think that probably doesn't play to his strengths. There have been some people this season who have felt really, like, ahead on everything that was a triple buzz, and he's more of a bottom clue guy, at least thus far, but he knows a ton of stuff, so that's always possible. Probably depends on the boards in large measure. He doesn't seem to have any weaknesses knowledge-wise.
Well, that being said, though, Steve, the Tournament of Champions level material is generally more difficult, so that may prove to be an advantage for him as well, especially if he's picking up, the $2,000 clues in every category.
Yeah, and that's what we don't know yet, right? He's not on Learned League. I can't really go find out much about him as a trivia player, so it's hard to know, like, whether he's going to pick up 2000s in the TOC also. Like, but he's had some really good gets, I thought. So.
Yeah, he reminds me a lot of David Madden, where he just has a very strong knowledge base, but the buzzer speed isn't, like, incredible. And I mean, Dave's a phenomenal Jeopardy player, and I'm sure that when he finally gets to the Tournament of Champions, he'll do well there too. But
now, obviously, we don't know specifically whether Victoria was an alternate last week, but hypothetically, if you got to the green room and the first episode of the day, and you saw a player exhibit a strategy like Dan's, where in certain situations he bets incredibly aggressively, would you change your strategy?
Has he? He hasn't been going nuts on dailies, has he? Or has
No.
he? Yeah.
He
just
didn't play a daily. He didn't play a daily tonight.
Right.
Didn't he wager like 2,000 or something in a couple of the games last week?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
he's
felt
not
like-
going aggressively. I mean,
Yeah.
the only two times, as far as I can tell, the in terms of looking, well, he bet all but $1 in Well, I mean, he bet all but $1. Oh, yeah, that's a. Yeah, going back and looking at Thursday, he shouldn't have bet what he did in the big end of. Okay, yeah. When he bet what he did in the Crush games, either today or his first game, big difference from when he bet all but $1 in Thursday's game, when he By the way, I'm about to get into some technical wagering stuff, but when the difference between first and second is bigger than second and third, first actually has quite a large advantage because second can't both cover third and defend against a double stumper against first. It's of course known as Stratton's dilemma in the J Archive glossary. But now, of course, first is in a big advantage there, and he obviously squandered that advantage by betting all but a dollar in American literature.
Yeah.
But again, still, the question remains: would you change your strategy, knowing that someone like Dan is reckless, almost?
Yeah, I mean, late in the game, you're definitely just trying to avoid runaways, right? I mean, like, so if you have a late DD or something like that, that would be your main goal rather than catching up, I would think. I mean, depending on the position, but, you know, if I've got 5,000 and he's got 10,000, you know, against a lot of people, I'd wager 5. Probably not against him, though. That may be a bad example.
Drew?
Oh, sorry, I'm
I
just
know
going
you've
back
already
and checking out the old archive games. I missed Thursday and Friday last week, so...
Yeah, I haven't watched Thursday or Friday yet.
I did.
You feel you say you did, Steve, and it almost sounds like that's 30 minutes of your life you want back.
No, not at all. No, not at all. I thought, like, Friday's game was awesome. You crazy? Like, everybody had, like, 12 grand or more at the end of DJ. It was one of those, like, actually more than 15 grand at the end of DJ. I thought it was a great
Thursday, yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't. Sorry, no, don't read anything into my tone. Sorry, I'm off on which... Oh, you know what? I'm off on which day is which. Yeah, Thursday was scintillating.
And then, of course, Friday he went and bet normally, which confused everybody.
What's happening? Yeah, he's daring people. I don't know. That's not true. But yeah, it's interesting to see. They're, you know, certainly it's a signature thing, you know, so that'll be good for him. It's like, you know, it's like Rogers TDDs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All but a dollar in final. Yeah, that'll. Well, you know what? Full disclosure, we almost had Dan on tonight's panel. Unfortunately, he is stuck in an airport, so I'm sure he will be able to join us next time on, or at least I'm hoping he'll be able to join us next time on live panel, and maybe we'll get some information out of him as to what his idea was. Maybe it's more of the Karen Ash sort of thing, where she just, oh look, I have lots of money, Final Jeopardy, dollar signs!
It's hard to fault him for that. I don't know. I feel confident.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, he's getting everything right for the most part. You know. I guess the dominating strategy against him is to wager all but $2 on final. That's another thing you could do. I don't know why that didn't occur to me before.
I have some. Oh yes. Okay. I was just reminded of something because someone from Chicago this past weekend just sent me a friend request, but I don't know. I'm going to tell some fun Jeopardy stories from Chicago.
Yeah.
Basically, we have it's Friday afternoon. We're setting up for we're helping set up I think we're about to start folding event T-shirts, and one of the staffers walks up to Ben Ingram, all bug-eyed, and goes and has a fanboy moment. And then looks to his right, about 5 feet, is Julia Collins there. And thinks, oh, I recognize you too, but I don't remember your name.
Oh, not
Well,
not the right thing to say to her.
that makes up for that team that handed Ingram to take the camera so they could to take the picture of them with Colby, right?
Colby.
Yes, and I was the one that took the photo of Ben taking the photo of Colby.
Man, if only there was a photo of you taking that photo, then
I think somebody
we
might
would
have
achieve,
actually
like,
tried
gold
to, but the great thing about wandering around all of the Quiz Bowl national tournaments is everyone has like their favorite player, and they sort of forget every other Jeopardy contestant there. So
Yeah.
you'll have somebody come up, and I'm sure that Kristin might be able to tell if she had an experience where someone came up to her and like, "You're from Jeopardy," and then like Colby or Alex Jacob, who was there, or Ben Ingram, or any one of the various Jeopardy alums might have probably been standing right with her, talking to her.
Right.
It's-
I think Colby's kind of the. I think it happens more for him than it does for anybody else, though. Like, what I learned from kind of hanging around Colby this weekend was you're going to spend a lot of time watching him get his picture taken with people who, like, barely even look at you. Like, Ben and Alex and I were just kind of standing there after the Quanta match, and all these, groups of people and individual people, and everybody wanted their picture with Colby, and, like, they just watch us all compete, But Colby's the rock star.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a that, and of course coming right off of what happened with Ben and Colby. I mean, that was knee-slappingly hilarious, and I feel as though Julia took it okay.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I missed Julie when she was there. I never got to meet her, so.
Yeah, she was
Maybe
there on
next tournament in
Friday.
Chicago.
Oh yeah. She left before you got in because, of course, you decided you were going to show up late. The
Excuse me.
irony. The irony.
I do not normally show up late, and I wasn't the one driving, so.
You were the one who showed up late to this panel this evening, Drew. But
I did not
He
show
was
up late.
1 minute early, I believe.
I believe I showed up at 9:56. For those who weren't in our pre-panel discussion for about 30 seconds, I arrived close to the deadline. But like my college admissions essays, they were submitted before the deadline was concluded. So nobody has to be any the wiser, but now they are.
Okay, so we have some questions, by the way, that I'm going to get to before I go into the This Week on Jeopardy segment. First up, from Megan Barnes. For those of you who have been on game shows, what is the question you got wrong where you see the answer everywhere now?
Oh, the Bach and Handel one. Yeah, the final Jeopardy that I went on. But the going to church on Easter was a little bit awkward when they did the Hallelujah. And, yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, right. You'd think I'd have an awesome answer to this question. The only reason I keep seeing answers everywhere is because my friends keep trolling me about them. So many of the things I missed were not like. It's not like Bader Meinhof, like, oh, I never knew that. Oh, now I hear it all the time, kind of stuff. Because it's not like Quonset huts come up that often in people's like everyday conversations. Or someone wrote a really interesting article about them in the New Yorker this week, No, like, just really what I have is mainly just a lot of regret for like missing stupid things or focusing on the wrong part of clues or whatever, So, we'll see. It's still too close for me to have anything like that come up too often yet, but because I forgot about a lot of the stuff I missed between the taping and the airing.
Okay.
Not the Quonset hut one though.
Yeah. A comment from Neville Fogarty. I remember when I met Eddie Timanis. Literally anyone else could have walked in the room and I wouldn't have cared. So that certainly explains a lot.
That was a big moment for me when Eddie Timanis tweeted at me. That was a really big moment because I lived in Northern Virginia during his run and it was a really big deal there. So it was like my life coming full circle.
What's been your biggest Jeopardy fan moment, Jerie?
Well, right now I'm doing a panel with Kristin Sausville, so that's a pretty big one.
Aww. Good answer.
There you go. That's my biggest Jeopardy fan moment.
Yeah, all mine have been backwards. like because I knew Kristin like from Quiz Bowl a little bit, right? Ingram was on like and that's so funny because I remember him as like a freshman with glasses, I mean it's just like would not have like expected his personality to like emerge the way it has, like, which is awesome, yeah, so many people have like eventually appeared on Jeopardy that I've known that like my big fan moments are all like, oh sweet, they're gonna be on, like Alex, notably recently, and the Alex versus Blish, match that turned out to be a disappointment. But the hype for that was amazing.
Hey, it was more entertaining than Mayweather Pacquiao, so I'm not really sure what we can complain about with that.
It was much like dressage. It was more entertaining than Mayweather Pacquiao.
Yeah. No, I think my big Jeopardy fan moment was getting to meet Bob Harris for the first time, because when I was younger, I think Bob's the first like champion I actually remember playing the show, like when I was like I think 5 or 6 or some really young age, and then I ended up running into him at the National History Bee. I think the first year was held, and I didn't realize it at the time, but like I ended up going to the same college he did, and just had lots of mutual friends that we didn't really know from both living in the Cleveland area. And yeah, and he's of course as exciting in person as you'd expect him to be. So nowadays, I have to admit, when I walk around these various Quiz Bowl tournaments, and it's like, oh look, another Jeopardy person. It's very convenient that it's very convenient in that pretty much everyone is really personable and friendly. Especially if you're going to like Chicago or to another event to volunteer your time, you tend to be a pretty good person already. So.
Yeah.
I feel like I've won the least on game shows of all my trivia friends. That's not entirely accurate, but it's not far off.
You won like
crazy.
20,000 more than I did.
Okay, well, my bad.
You won like $80,000 more than I did on one half the show appearances. So.
No, but very frequently, like I'll be hanging out and it'll be like me and Andy Kravis and June and Alex. It's kind of like, I lost to Alex by like 15 grand. I'm a little bummed about that. I was actually like shooting for when I found out he was going to be on. I was like watching his.
Steve,
what's that?
That you have two people on this panel who haven't been on a game show.
I do. I know.
I'm
it's a privileged position to be.
This is true.
Wait, I've been on game shows before.
This is a very personal.
Thanks, Drew.
I'm joking, of course. I'm sure that Andy and Jerie, their times are coming.
Yes.
And
yeah.
And my
absolutely
terrible psychic sense is predicting that this is in the short to mid range instead of the long term. So.
Yeah.
They
have no problem putting on people with tons of like either show following or like quiz credentials at this point. Apparently, given who they've been putting up this year. So.
Yeah.
None of those alleged things are actually issues, as far as I can tell.
So moving on to This Week in Jeopardy history, mostly because the boss says I can't open with it. But, June 2nd, probably one of the bigger days in the history of the show, other than the premiere date. Milestones in both the longest and second longest runs in the history of Jeopardy. Of course, Ken Jennings' first win was June 2nd, 2004. Julia Collins, her defeat was June 2nd, 2014.
Oh.
Interesting coincidence there. A personal, well, if you're a Canadian, a bit of a quasi-celebrity from outside of the show. Hamilton Tiger Cats offensive lineman Peter Diakowski, he celebrates his Jeopardiversary on Wednesday, June the 3rd. And this one coming from Mark Barrett, the late Richard Kaplan. His 5-game winning streak started June 4th, 1992. He was a semifinalist in the Tournament of Champions. And I should have also said the late Richard Kaplan, he passed away shortly after his tournament. So that bit of a somber note there. Now moving on to some 500 questions discussion.
Oh, I got one. I got a fun fact for the This Day in Jeopardy history. Do you know the name of the person who finished second to Ken Jennings in his first win?
Oh, It's not Senator Jerie.
It's not the last name that's important.
What's
Wait a
his name?
second, it's Julia.
Shaw?
Yeah, Julia Lazarus. I just think that's fun
Yes,
because her
wait a
name is
second.
Julia.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Of
Yeah.
course, yeah.
it was 20,000 to
yes.
18,600 going into final. She missed it though. Who is
And of
Marion
course-
Jones?
So,
Yes,
so I have a
of
question. Was June 2nd the one where he went all in on that math daily double?
No.
Oh, we're discussing the month, not the POC. Never mind.
June 2nd. Ouch.
Oh,
Bad
June the 2nd.
Jeopardy puns.
Yeah. I heard an on to 500 questions in there though. I'm ready for that if you
Yes. On the 500 questions, yes, Steve, you're the big winner.
want. Phew.
I was aware that there were some there was some stuff left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah,
Were
I
there
think.
contestants who stuffed in there?
Yeah, I think if you've seen I think this is public knowledge because there's a TV guide still of Richard Quest shaking hands with Shane Whitlock. Shane Whitlock was the unaired pilot, I suppose. Like, I don't know what to call it, but they taped his game, and he actually went out to Dan with, I believe it was his 28th. Don't quote me on that, but he went out on his 28th, and he did not get his 25th question milestone correct, so he actually didn't win any money.
Oh.
If they had elected not to air it, they would have paid him anyway if he had gotten the 5 or something else, but he did not finish. So
That makes me feel better about the whole thing because I had heard that he had been on, but that it hadn't, made the airing, obviously. So I'm glad to hear that, it's not like they left somebody who made it 400 questions in on the.
No, both for viewers' sake, for like the sake of viewers, that's good. But also, like if he had gone and they just hadn't liked the episode for whatever reason, they would have still paid him. That was in the contract. So
That's
Okay.
if your episode didn't air, you still got paid. If the whole show didn't get aired, I believe the contract said we all still got paid, which is pretty generous because that's not normally true.
no.
But we also weren't talking about MSQ money, so
Yeah.
perhaps less of an issue for them.
Now, what plans do you have for the winnings at this point, other than building a Quonset hut?
Well, Richard Quest knows, and everyone who was there in the audience knows, but but they didn't air it. Like, there's so much, you guys, of coffee housing and conversation between questions that didn't get aired, which I know is surprising to people who said the pacing was really slow, right? But everyone knows that I'm taking my wife to England next year who was in the audience, but nobody else knows that except for her, I guess. So we're going to do that. That's going to be the 10th anniversary trip that I mentioned. But that's one thing. The other thing is that I guess we won't have any student loans anymore, which is like really awesome. Improves cash flow and it kind of like doubles our money, like in a weird way. So
Please tell me what it's like when it happens.
yeah, no kidding. I mean, we don't have, it's not like either of us had to take out like full loans for undergrad or anything. Which people who do, like, I really feel for them. Like, ours is more like just the we both have 2 master's degrees, and and neither of us chose like lucrative. We're both librarians, so we've been chipping away. But so that's another big thing. Other than that, I'm going to get a new computer. My computer is from 2004 and does run Vista. So I think it's time. Vista is very stable though with new software compared to Windows 8. And I just bought a refrigerator. I don't have the money yet, so nothing extravagant. Sock a little bit away, and that can be the down payment on the next house. We knew we were gonna need to move anyway, so because I don't have a garage, like stuff like that. Just I have nowhere to even put a lawnmower, so I use my neighbor's lawnmower. Like it's definitely starter house kind of stuff, So that was a long answer. My apologies.
That's fine. Now, one question for the full panel. For those of you who have seen some of the 500 questions, if there was to be season 2, what would you change about the show?
No question. I think that would probably be the easiest way to immediately bring the show up a couple notches.
Who would
What did you say,
put
Drew?
instead?
I missed.
No
Oh, he said
Quest.
no Richard Quest.
Yeah, he seems like a very personable guy, but yeah, I mean, there are different types of game show hosts. Sometimes you want like a host with gravitas, and sometimes you want like Richard Quest. I mean, I don't want to say anything bad about the guy without ever having met him, but he definitely. I mean, I think the thing I wouldn't change about 500 Questions were the contestants, because I
Yeah.
thought that the contestants they chose were all
Mm-hmm.
great. I'd probably make some gameplay tweaks to make the. I mean, I'm not sure what any of these suggestions would be, but probably something to make the competitors have a better shot of making it in. Probably want to increase the money or have at least some way to make more money. Yeah, but the contestants were great. The rest of it was a little meh.
The questions were good. The questions were good. The contestants were good. But I agree, like tweak the gameplay so it goes faster and it's more competitive.
Yeah, I think almost all of us agree that there should have been some reward for the challenger, even if it's the same format. Like, give them money for getting it right if the player didn't, or like
Just like they were racing
know,
500
or,
questions or something.
give them. Well, it also here's the funny one. There's an actual flaw in the game, which is that if you're the challenger and you're going second in a battle, and you get and you've named 9 of the 10 federal holidays, the challenger has no incentive to name the 10th one other than not giving the player money, because they're not going to get a strike. So if they have no strikes, like the only reason you do it is to deny them money / save face. So it's kind of a weird one. I think most people agreed, and this was one I heard on the internet, that making the idea of the endurance factor come into play more would make sense, i.e. like doubling the money on board 2 and then 3x on board 3, and you're not talking about like massively increasing the prize pool unless someone goes really deep, right? But there's something more to it, right? Like, as opposed to just like, here's some more, so that might be better too.
Did 500 Questions even have a prize budget? I mean, it looked like it was very. Yeah, it doesn't look. I mean, you would think that ABC, which was the network that like gave away $250,000 consistently on Primetime Millionaire, you'd think that like 10 years later, they'd at least be expecting to give out like $250,000 over the course of a 9-episode, 7-night TV event. So.
I assume that there were bankroll concerns of some nature. The show was not produced by ABC. Importantly, it was produced by NBC Universal and then sold to ABC. So there may be something going on there, but I don't know if there is or not. There's a lot of different possibilities, and there have been some comments out there that people felt like there was going to be more money than there ended up being, like just based on what they were saying to us. But that's I mean, it's pretty hard to complain, really, because once you're in position, you're in a pretty good shape to do pretty decently. It's just there's not consolation prizes and stuff like that, which kind of hurts.
Yeah.
Now, one final question: what % chance would you give to there being a second season?
I'll take the bullet. I think about 80. I think it's going to come back. I don't think there's going to be any changes. I think it's going to perform just well enough for them to bring it back a second time. And I wouldn't be surprised if they got like a second season with similar ratings. So like not incredible ratings, not like Millionaire 2000. That's never going to happen again, just due to the way the TV landscape is fractured.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they get like a 1.5 in the demo, and maybe like 4 or 5 million viewers. And I wouldn't be surprised if it came back for a second. If the numbers stayed pretty consistent, I wouldn't even be surprised if if a third were commissioned. Just because, I mean, if you have something that works, I mean, it's not lighting the world on fire, but it's probably pretty cheap to produce, especially compared to any scripted program. And it's a good show that you could put on for a week in the summer every year.
Variety reported that this was already a 2-season order about 8 months ago. People keep forgetting that one. I don't know if it's true, right? Like, I mean, who knows how any of that stuff is? But that was like stated like a year ago or something like that in some media outlet. I think it's pretty high. Like, I think the show definitely like seemed to improve. Like it seemed to get traction, which is what you're worried about, obviously. And the other thing is, and this is hard to notice, like within the time frame, is that we could observably see things getting smoother with the production process, with the host, with everything, like as things were going on. And I think there's a difference, like just watching it between like Quest's episode 1 persona and his episode 6 persona, for example, that I think were generally movements in the right direction.
He seemed to like really care about you guys by the end. Like you could tell he was cheering for you. He wanted you guys to do well.
Yes, and you could see that evolve very quickly, like in taping. The other thing is, this is, what you saw was 9 hours of TV. That took 44 studio hours to make.
Oh.
So we were, I mean, yeah, this was camp. Like this was like,
but not
this was
the Richard Quest hosting type of camp. It was a different type. Yeah, speaking of things on the cutting room floor, I have a question for Steve. What happened to your other 300 questions?
They yeah. Oh, you mean in the episode, or you mean why weren't there 500 questions even in the whole run, or why did I lose so quick?
I was just referring in your run because I just assumed that on a show called 500 Questions you would answer 500 questions.
I was wrecking that board. It's a disappointing moment because I believe I was 14 of 15 and then 14 of 18 on that board, which is pretty sad, in the grand scheme of things. But alas, it's really funny because I already won 2 months ago, so that euphoria kind of wore off sometime in April. Then I got the oh man, you're on TV, that's awesome, oh you did so good, friends well-wishing euphoria. Now I'm left with the competitive trivia player, why the heck didn't I say Gallipoli, what an idiot, kind of residue that I'm still, kind of working through, because it's I care enough about this stuff that my goal wasn't to get on TV and make money on a game show and that's it, right? My goal is to be as good as I possibly can at this, and I don't feel like I really was on the show, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but just means I need to keep working.
So, would you all watch again for season 2?
If all my friends are on it again, yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, I mean, I assume that the 12 people that got flown out that didn't get on the show would be invited back. I mean, they were all vetted. Some of them wouldn't go. I know that.
Jerie, would you watch?
It's trivia and it's on TV, so yeah, definitely. It wasn't my favorite, but it's trivia on TV.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I felt. I felt personal responsibility to make good television for them so that we could get more trivia on TV. Yeah. I don't know, I only have so much control, but I tried.
Well, if 500 Questions comes back from a season 2, I hope they consider having it take place inside of a giant hourglass in New York.
That could not possibly go wrong. I'm assuming that building is still just there.
I think it might have been torn down, but if it isn't, I bet they could get a great deal on it.
I thought it was funny that they let Kravis go through a reasonable percentage of the audition process. There's no way they're putting him on. They're already getting all the MSQ comparisons and stuff. Yeah. Maybe they would later.
Well, as long as you're a certifiable genius, then I don't see any reason why they wouldn't put you on.
We took IQ tests at tapings.
Oh. I read that.
So that they could put our IQ tests in a file, presumably, so that we could be certified geniuses. During the audition process, they were looking for all this genius cred, oh, you skipped a grade. I told that story. They let Pam have it, but that was one of the reasons I got on the show, I think. Just really, they wanted us to be able to do tricks Raj, how Raj can recite all the pi digits up to 100 or something like that. They were looking for stuff like that. I assume they're going to be doing the same thing with this new show they're casting for, because it's the same casting group, and they seem to have the same angle on who they want for the show. So
I wish that I had gone through it only so that if I had to take the IQ test, I could have absolutely failed it on purpose. What makes you a certifiable genius? You have an IQ of 45 and you qualified for the show.
In fairness, that's not where they got Holzhauer's 158 IQ or Korblaw's 140. Those were like, from other. Well, those were numbers they told them on the application. I can't really say anything else about that. I mean, presumably they had been tested at some point.
Okay, so moving on to our next topic, we have Quanta.
Yay!
Yay, Quanta. Jordan Boyd Graber's Quanta toss-up answering computer program for Quiz Bowl. He's from the University of Colorado and the University of Maryland. Battled Team Humanity. Kristin,
Team Humanity!
Alex Jacob, Colby Burnett, and Ben Ingram to a 200 draw on Saturday evening at the NAKT High School National Championship Tournament in Chicago. As I said earlier, pre-game thoughts are going to be in the now out of order episode 41 of Jeopardy Live Panel, but obviously we can talk post-game. Kristin, what was it like being up on stage battling for humanity?
At first, I think we all thought, oh, okay, this is going to be okay, we can do this. And then Quanta got something like the first 5 questions. And what really struck out to me was the audience. When Quanta got the first question, they're all clapping, they're all cheering, they're all going nuts. And it decreased with every question Quanta got until Quanta got the 5th question, and it was just silence in the audience. That kind of cracked me up. But I think Colby was the first member of #Team Humanity to get a toss-up, and everybody just went nuts. He jumped up with such force that his chair flew off the stage, and Ben had to pick it up. But yeah, then the audience went crazy, and then it was kind of back and forth. I felt it was more even from there on out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, I remember sending Jerie a message mid-match saying, "This is not going well for humanity right now."
Yeah.
This was after about, oh man, Quanta is doing really well. And then the tides turned.
A lot of the early questions, I think, had quotes in them, and apparently quotes are one of Quanta's strongest points because, the whole point of a quote is that only one person said it. So it's very easy to pin the correct answer to that.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I know there was one situation where basically I can't speak to the specific question on the air because obviously these could still get used, but there was one quote where Quanta made a ridiculously early buzz. The way it was going, I thought Quanta was going to make a hilariously wrong answer, and then it got the question right. So
yeah. Oh boy, that was kind of nerve-wracking, but especially, I felt like sitting there with Colby and Ben and Alex, I felt, I just want to get in it all. I felt like, I was kind of competing against them just to kind of contribute something. I wanted to make sure I wasn't just sitting there, I ended up getting one wrong, and I felt really badly about that, but I think I got 2, no, I can't remember if I got 2 or 3. One of them, though, was the last one that made it a tie, so I am very, very, very proud of that.
And one of Kristin's buzzes was so ridiculously early
that
you heard the buzzing noise and you're like, oh, that darn Quanta.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you look and it's like, oh, they're recognizing Kristin. This is a good sign. I was firmly entrenched in the audience. I was about, probably like 25 rows out of 30 rows back, trying to type up a Jeopardy game while this was going on. Excuse me, a Jeopardy-like but not actual Jeopardy game. No. And it was great though because there were a couple of high school student groups sitting around me, and as Kristin was saying, like they went crazy when Quanta got the first buzz in, and then like each successive time, I think it was partly the caffeine wearing off. Mm-hmm. I think it was partly the fact that it was like the end of a long day, but and it was interesting though because I think Quanta's strong points and going in on the 5-hour car ride from Cleveland to Chicago, my friend and I, when we made the drive, we discussed how we thought the robot was going to work. And it's incredible because Quanta's a very strong history and science player. And the thing with Quiz Bowl Science is there are very few incredible science players in Quiz Bowl right now. It's such a like wide and varied topic that there are only probably there's probably 50 super top-notch history players right now, and there are probably like 50 super top-notch literature players, but there's probably only like between 5 and 10 science players on a comparable level, just because there's so much that can be asked about. And it was incredible just to see, because it seemed like Quanta was especially good at the science questions. And I remember Ben got a math question pretty early, which I was very happy to see.
Well, part of what was going on with science was, and this is something that we talked about, like, when we're comparing our own strengths and weaknesses among Team Humanity, it was like, wait a minute, none of us is good at science. Like, we're all, like, history, geography, stuff like that. So that was definitely a weak point. I think if we had a science specialist on Team Humanity, then I think we would have gotten the win for sure.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, there is the fact that, and I made a joke about this on Facebook, and it was a joke, which is like, well, if they had real quiz bowlers instead of those Jeopardy people, right? But there is a thing though, which is that like people who become trivia generalists don't necessarily tend to be science players in college if they're quiz bowlers that go on to do like later quizzing. Like I'd say that's more rare than common. Maybe I'm wrong, but you get the sense that it's the kind of humanities, social science type people that tend to do that more. So it's perhaps not surprising.
Science that I have picked up, it's you can use some similar strategies to memorize elements that you can use to memorize the presidents and capitals and states and countries and stuff. So I think, at least for me, what science I do know is stuff that I was able to teach myself or memorize with similar techniques.
Yeah.
There's also a bigger difference between...
Like, from my own perspective, just want to chime in here. Most of the science stuff I do know these days is because I have played and or moderated so much Quiz Bowl that I have learned things by osmosis from science pack.
And yet, when that osmosis question came up, you didn't get it. No,
it turned out it was actually diffusion.
Question. But the other thing, though, is for the people listening into this panel that aren't familiar with like the current high school national level science questions, these aren't like questions about chemical elements. They're questions about like 200 level topics in physics and chemistry, and just like ridiculous, like I don't know, I can't think of a comparable topic right now that wouldn't spoil a question, but just like these are like the sometimes, but none of the Quanta questions I don't believe were on like a simple element type answer. They were all very complex topics, and
science questions by nature tend to be slightly more definition heavy. Like, you use this symbol to signify this in this equation and this in that equation and blah, blah, blah. And that's the kind of thing that a computer would be exceptionally good at answering, I would think, compared to humans.
Moving back to something that I think might be better for the whole panel to answer. A 200-200 tie, do we think that's a good result?
I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah.
I want to know, yeah, man. Was Vince McMahon booking that? Like, how did that? Like, that's just so like movie perfect ridiculous, right? Like, that's the end of your student film about Quiz Bowl versus a computer, right there.
Yeah,
I thought it was. I thought that was awesome, but I think
it never even crossed my mind. Everyone was saying, "Oh, are you going to win or are you going to lose? Is the computer going to win? Is the computer going to lose?" And honestly, a tie never even crossed my mind. And the last question, I didn't even realize was the last question until I answered it, and then they announced the score. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy with the 200-200 tie because if Quanta faced off against real quiz bowlers, no, I'm joking. I'm joking, of course. But don't quote me on this, but I believe that people in the audience were arguing that there were a couple of questions that the humans should have been like power credited for.
I heard a couple.
There might have been one or two questions that the humans were assigned 10 instead of 15. But whatever the result, all I remember is as soon as question 40 whatever was done, they immediately shut down the computer and they like squirreled it away because you weren't getting any photo ops with the computer. I mean, Maybe if the computer had been triumphant, he would have been available, but they couldn't take him away and jump out of the ballroom fast enough.
No.
So power markings. Yeah. So for everyone watching who doesn't know what powers are, in Quizbowl you get 10 points for a correct answer on a toss-up, but in some formats, including the one they were playing, there's like a point. Players do not see it; only the reader sees it. Before which, if you answer, you will get 15. So like it's like a 3-pointer, like answering early, right? Like like a 3-pointer in basketball. But it's not like they go blah 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 blah. Power ends here. Blah blah blah. Like you have to kind of guess whether you should go in early to try to get the 15. So.
Speaking of which, I'm very proud of the fact that I got tonight's final, and my I don't know, father, who played high school basketball, did not. And yet,
Whoa!
yes.
I don't.
That
want
would have been more. That would have been more accessible to people of his generation too. I would think, because I would think they'd know who that guy was and stuff, right?
I don't want to burst your bubble, Andy, but I played middle school basketball, and I was so clueless on this final that I was like, zone defense.
Maybe like
defense in the final.
Because I don't follow basketball at all, but it was an instant-get for me. As soon as I read it, I was like, oh, well, that's the shot clock. What else could it be?
Do you know how they came up with that?
Oh.
Do you know how they came up with 24 seconds?
No.
Yes, I do. The Syracuse. Do you mind if I explain this, Steve?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Oh, I'm interested.
Okay. Yeah, the Syracuse owner basically looked at the box score of a game that he enjoyed watching.
Yep.
And he realized that he took 48 minutes, and he took a look at the amount of shots that had taken place during that game. And he realized that, well, that's one shot every 24 seconds.
Yep.
Oh.
96 shots in 48 minutes is a good game, according to the Syracuse Nationals owner, and it has never changed since in the pros. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so it worked out, and
basketball before the shot clock was occasionally unwatchable. There were games that would end things like 10-2. Like a team would just get up by 8 and then like pass the ball around like until the other team could steal it, theoretically. So it was a good choice.
But also, I guess one more question about Quanta. What surprised, for those of you who watched, what surprised you the most?
Well, being the only person on the panel that watched Quanta.
Hold on a second. No, that is incorrect. True.
Oh,
I watched
I'm sorry.
Quanta,
You were there.
there may have been a surreptitious live stream that went out to some people.
I didn't see that.
I watched
As far as you know, I did not see the surreptitious live stream. I also didn't see the surreptitious live stream.
But there may have been other people on the panel who may have seen a surreptitious live stream. And what surprised you the most? What surprised people the most about the match?
Want to go ahead, Drew, or?
I'll say one of my favorite moments is around the end of the second half of about 3/4 of the way probably through the game. There was a toss-up question on a modern pop culture television series, and I remember looking at the wall, and they had explained that they only programmed the top however many answers into Quanta, and they avoided based on frequency, and therefore there were a lot of pop culture categories that weren't in there, and Quanta was instructed like not to buzz. And this is totally apocryphal because I can't even remember if this actually happened now, but I remember they would show you on the wall what Quanta was thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember looking during this TV show question, and I think it was like the possible answers I was thinking of were like Little Women, Glengarry Glen Ross, and like 3 other just incredibly irrelevant questions, which I just remember thinking like there was nothing I would like more than to have this buzz in with like electronegativity when the answer is a TV show title.
That would have been pretty great, yeah. I mean, because I watched on this surreptitious live stream that has been mentioned, I couldn't. The audio wasn't exactly perfect, so what I took away from it more than anything was just the energy of the crowd was insane. Like I don't know, Kristin, how much of that you could hear or feel, but just
Yeah.
the reaction to everything was just so intense. There was a kid sitting in front of you, Andy, that, oh my goodness, like he was just so into it. It was just a blast to watch. It was so much fun. And the boos and the cheers, and I felt like I was there. I was jumping out of my seat. When you got that tying question, oh my goodness, I was losing it. It was so much fun to watch. It was really a blast.
One thing that I liked a lot was that all four of us got something.
Yeah.
Like, we all got to contribute. And like I said earlier, that was something I was really paranoid about going in. But I'm happy that everybody got to represent humanity. And
Did very well. Yeah. Because of the pace of the game, a tie really felt like a win. I don't know.
Yeah, it did.
There was a round once. There was a round once that my team won 410 to 80 in Quiz Bowl, and my scoreline was 0-0-1. So I had a single neg. Two of my teammates both got like 7 toss-up. I didn't feel bad at the end though.
I remember there was one team at the tournament this past weekend with an absolutely incredible player on it, and I won't name the team, but I'm pretty sure he finished like with 130 points per game, and his 3 teammates were combining for like 15 points per game.
Wow.
That's how it is sometimes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is that like the highest scorer is going to be someone where their teammates don't get any questions because they're just going to pick up all the rebounds themselves. So it's.
I think to get one of the individual scoring trophies, the cutoff was something like 66 points per game, and that would be for like the top 30 players, which that's like you're answering 6 out of every 20 questions by yourself, which is a very, very impressive number.
Yeah, 130 is beyond crazy. Like that means you're winning a game on average alone.
Yeah.
Which is,
I think in my own career, I think I had 2 games that were that high, and
I had 110 once. That was my highest PPG ever. It was in 1 match.
yeah.
I believe I had one game at 160, but it was trash. And if I'm remembering correctly, the joke was that I know pretty much nothing about sports, and therefore the 4 toss-ups I missed you'd think would have been the 4 sports toss-ups, but in reality I got 2 of the sports toss-ups, which should just tell you how bizarre that round was written.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had a couple trash rounds where I had 14, but it was never with really good teammates. And there was a round at ACF Fall 1 year where I had 12. That was my crowning achievement, including 7 in a row. That was pretty fun.
I had the 5 in a row once at NAQT, 5 powers in a row at the college regionals, which I just remember, and it was literally like my 5 favorite things at the time. It was like, here's my favorite band, here's a toss-up on John Claude and Christo, here's a toss-up on Grover's Corners from our town, and I just remember sitting there like, this isn't going to happen again, and the next round I think I got like 1 the entire time, so...
Yes, I mean, I can speak to. I think the best I ever did I went power, 10 power because I couldn't think of the third answer in time. But
it's pretty good.
Yeah. I had some good. I had a couple of. I had if the pack hit me, basically, I was able to. Yeah. Okay. I see it now. I had a 5. I had a 5. Pardon me.
I believe they're called packets south of the border. So.
Okay, the packet hit me. I see here I had a 581 line.
Those Canadians.
Yeah, a 581, and then let's see. Oh yes, that game where the packet opened on a where I opening lined a question because of there was the first lady whose name was Lucretia.
Garfield.
Yes, Garfield's wife. That was the lead-in, and I remember that one thanks to Brad Rutter, the Brad Rutter final from 9 months before, and went and demolished a poor fellow Canadian team who then were like, we're not worthy the rest of the tournament. But Okay. Yeah. I suppose we should. I should ask if there's any questions any member of the panel has for anyone else.
Yeah, Kristin and Jerie, why don't you have beards? They're so comfortable and fashionable right now.
I read an article last year that we've reached peak beard, which means I'm going to be the equivalent of like a 1993 mustache dad pretty soon, which I'm totally comfortable with. Having been raised in mid-Michigan, that was a very common thing.
Yeah. I'm cosplaying as Doctor Strange this weekend, so I need to grow it out, and therefore, after this weekend, it's probably going to go bye.
That sounds fun.
Funny thing is that Justin's actually working on one right now. If he has a long,
A Doctor Strange cosplay?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, he's growing a beard. If he has he's in the Army Reserves, and if he has a bigger gap than usual between drills, then he'll grow one for a while.
I can't
So there is one in my house.
think of him with a beard. That's fun.
So,
No, his comes
by the
in
way-
red, which is kind of funny. We never realized that until he cried. Yeah.
a couple of comments from people who've tweeted in. First of all, from Andy Kravis. When I first applied for 500 questions, I was told, "We like you, but seriously, GTFO." 3 months later, I get a call. 3 or 4 interviews later, I thought, "There's no way I'm getting on, right? Steve nailed it. No way, indeed." And then, okay. You know what? I have to ask you this one from Megan Burns. Steve, is your new refrigerator running?
No, because I don't have it yet. I ordered it from Lowe's today. Worst answer ever to that question. So, but if it were, I would go out and catch it right now. If I had that new refrigerator already, I would run out that door right behind me, and everyone could see that on camera.
Hey, I have to say, considering the questions you asked Megan, that's a pretty epic troll. So
I wasn't super mean.
you were trolling, Steve. Admit it.
I mean, a little.
Have you got
Drew and
Richard
I
Preston again?
People who have been on video game forums, so like any trolling we would actually ever do is like so minimal compared to what we've seen. Like, you know. Anyway.
Do you have Richard Quest in a can? Well, then you better let him out.
The weirdest thing about me and Richard, like you noticed we always wore the same clothes, right?
Yeah.
It was so they could cut stuff in. I'm pretty sure that like some of my random reaction shots or whatever like aren't necessarily my reaction to when that question happened. But he was up there for the entire run in the same suit, which just had to be weird for him.
Well, one of my favorite things, going back to like the reality show editing, what little bit they did, was in the commercial before the show aired, and it's like, name the first 5 of the 10 novels by Mark Twain. And you're like, I have no idea. And then you say Pudd'nhead Wilson, and it's like, nobody who would ever say Pudd'nhead Wilson as the answer to a Mark Twain question would also say at the same time, I have no idea. I have no idea.
No, I said it was, I don't know this, and I'm sure it was from the question about, like, not that, whatever it was. Yeah, I immediately was like, I'm fairly sure I didn't say that here.
And I remember I was watching that commercial with my dad in the basement, and he was like, he doesn't know what it is. And I'm like, Dad, I know Steve. He knows what this is. This is the most obvious fake cut-in ever.
I mean, I didn't, right? Like, it would have been very possible for me to only get 4 there, because I got it with 0.8 seconds left, sorry, for some reason. So, yeah. Somebody told me they originally tested that game with 30 seconds to give an answer. I'm glad they arrived at 10.
Oh.
That would have been painful, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been wonderful for Chemical Elements. Let me run through the entirety of the Elements song. It would have been great for American presidents, yeah. There's United States, Mexico, Canada. I mean, the Animaniacs would totally come in handy right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, from my understanding, now that the show's been taped, is it true that during the audition there was a question asking for like the 12th digit of pi? which would have literally been like the best blitz question ever. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0.
It was the 6th or 7th digit of pi.
Okay.
But here's the thing. There was a written test that people took when they went to Cali auditions that were the same questions as the ones that they gave us over Skype. Some people over Skype were allowed to blitz. I was not allowed to blitz over Skype, for example. So I actually had to think about it and then give my answer. But he was actually prompting me for final answers on my Skype quiz.
Justin was
Which,
they let blitz, yeah.
There was, it was just a small lack of consistency, but I don't think they were going off of like scores entirely for casting. Obviously, I think the reason they wanted to do 50 questions via Skype is because they wanted to get a sense of how people would look on camera answering questions to start with. Then they did a personality interview. Then they did the 50. Have you guys heard about all this stuff? All the audition process stuff?
It was.
I mean, they had 6 hours of tape on me and then flew me out to LA for callbacks.
Yeah, he was kind of a ridiculous amount of time.
But but everybody says the contestants were really good.
Yeah.
Like obviously, they did that right. To some degree, that LA that double LA trip was pretty rough, but I'm glad I had some vacation days saved up.
Yeah.
No, I remember when Justin was auditioning and we couldn't use the DVR at the same time that he was on Skype or something, and then it was like the season finale of my kid's favorite show, and it's like, he's gonna have to Skype you later. I'm not recording this.
Let me guess, Gravity Falls?
No, Star Wars Rebels.
Oh, I figured.
Yeah, it was the season finale, and I'm like, no, we're recording this. I'm sorry. You're not the one who's gonna be home with the kids tomorrow when they say, "Oh, did you record the last Star Wars Rebels?" Well, no.
all the casting people were super nice, though. Like, if you're thinking of going in on that brain teaser show or whatever it is, definitely, just enjoy the process if you're so inclined. Everybody was really, really cool.
So we also have another contribution from Megan, by the way, regarding...
Oh,
no. No, this is better. This has to do with Team Humanity.
Yay!
And the Quanta match. She linked us, if you go to the hashtag, to the Wikipedia article for the documentary Harvard Beats Yale 2929. Considering the director and producer was somebody named Kevin Rafferty, I am wondering if the producer is somehow related to Megan, but.
Might be a connection.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but it sounds like a very fascinating documentary regarding looks like the 1968 meeting between Harvard and Yale.
Yeah. You're aware of who, I guess if you're looking at the Wikipedia page, you've seen it already, but you know who played in that game? For those of you not looking?
Give me one moment and I'll tell you.
No, it's really cool. Tommy Lee Jones played in that game.
Oh,
that's actually that's.
So, it's a documentary about that game featuring Tommy Lee Jones as a member of the game, not the narrator. Which is pretty cool. Anyway, because Tommy Lee Jones went to Harvard. I imagine most people do not know that or would not guess that. So.
He was Al Gore's roommate.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Megan chose to chime in saying, no relation. So,
no relation.
Well, it's like the whole. You know what? I don't know. For those of you who are familiar with the crew who is on Jeopardy Twitter, Enos Williams gave me the joke today, suggesting that I might be related to Brandon Saunders.
Yeah.
Who has been on the?
You never know.
I mean, I'm sure that mitochondrial Eve, you might have another relative below her.
But I almost responded with the with an image meme with the Fry image meme of not sure if trolling or if serious, but.
Well, for those of you not in the know, Andy and I both saw each other along with Kristin this past week in Chicago volunteering at the Quiz Bowl tournament, and I was assigned in a room where the 4 people assigned were Andy Saunders, Brandon Saunders, Robert Knecht Schmidt, and Drew Scheeler. So it was literally like the alphabet mashed together, and I'm Robert K.S., of course, being one of the many founders of the Jeopardy archive back in the day. So we were sort of like the incestuous Jeopardy room, but not in that way.
That was
Not in that
presumably.
No.
Yeah.
Well, but except for the Saunderses.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Brandon has been on Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Yes, Brandon has.
You guys were staffing together too. You and Brandon were.
I know that was the Saunders room. That was.
Yeah. Team talk.
We didn't actually tell any of the teams we had the same last name. I was just like, I'm Andy. This is Brandon. Much like I didn't tell the team at whatchamacallit at the on Friday night working the scrimmage games that the team from Delaware that you had met the governor.
Yes. That was fun. That was fun running the scrimmage room with you.
I'm jealous. I wish that I lived in a. I wish that I lived in a state that was small enough where I could meet the elected officials. I mean, here in Ohio, you have to drive like 2.5 hours, and then actually, you like can't just walk on in and say hi.
Yeah.
Well, no, I didn't walk in. They invited me.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Who's the most famous politician you've met? I know you're generally in Ottawa, Jerie. I'm sure you see lots of them.
Yeah, you'd think, wouldn't you? Geez, I don't know that I've ever seen a politician walk. I guess I saw Justin Trudeau in Rockcliffe Park when I used to live there, but that's about it.
Okay. My member of Parliament showed up to a trivia show of mine a couple weeks ago.
Very
Can you
nice.
just write a category on the spot, bills you didn't vote for but you should have?
So, like, in Canada, they elect people to Parliament who, like, might do trivia. Like, that's a big step in the right direction, I would say, from who's in Congress. I can't see very many of them going to trivia.
That would be
Ever.
something that they
Certainly
would.
not knowing any
They would be
answers.
like, don't vote for my opponent. He goes to trivia.
He's a nerd.
Nerd.
Every other week I go to a pub quiz a couple towns over, and the other week the school superintendent was there at the pub quiz, but he didn't actually do the quiz. He just sat at the bar and drank all night. So
I wonder why.
it's enough. It's almost the start.
We had, that 2004 election, I think, was greatly defining for America in terms of what we want out of our political candidates. Yeah. It's because it's like, man, that everyone's like, oh, that Kerry, he's such a technocrat. It's like, yeah, he uses data to solve problems. Who wants that to be president?
Steve, of course, living in the state that nearly elected Clay Aiken.
I voted for him.
Well, I probably would have too.
You should have seen her nail.
I'm laughing, but I wouldn't too.
Yeah. And just think, if he were invisible, he could make you his tonight.
That's true.
And I still can't believe he lost to Rubin in the primaries.
The weirdest thing was seeing him go on political talk shows and be serious. Yeah. Because it's like, dude, you're still Clay Aiken. I'm sorry. Someday. I mean, Sonny Bono was in Congress. He's as ridiculous as Clay Aiken, right?
The stash makes him a little more ridiculous, let's be honest.
True, to be honest.
Clay Aiken needs to grow a stash, and then he'll have no problems.
I think I need to work on the idea I had for Jeannie that I would, after the live panel, I would cut this down so it's not as so it's easier to pick out the parts people might want to watch afterwards.
In all seriousness, you should just annotate it and be like, 500 questions starts now.
Yeah.
Pointless jokes about Clay Aiken's non-existent mustache are at this moment.
That would not be the worst idea.
This needs to be saved for the public record,
Yeah.
It's like that senator that read the Patriot Act into public record. We're reading contemporary American politicians.
I got on I got to be Raleigh Man in the paper. That made me happy. Raleigh Man wins $110,000.
Florida Man?
I was going to say anything better than Florida Man.
He went
Area Man would have been even better, but nonetheless. That's the
Universe
onion
Man
one.
still wins.
Yeah, I got to be Delaware woman. That's pretty cool.
Delaware woman.
Delaware.
Hello,
When was I when I saw the I can't remember where I was when I saw the article recently about the bingo fight in Florida because somebody sat in somebody else's favorite spot.
Yeah.
That's Florida.
Yep.
Well, I think we're at a point where I think I'm safe to say thanks for tuning in. I can't believe there are still 6 people watching this on YouTube.
I don't want to burst your bubble, but I think I have this open in another window, so it might really be 5.
Well, what we have to do
Sorry.
what we have to do is end on a cliffhanger because then more people will tune in tomorrow.
That's
I didn't want to bring it up, but I think we only had like 12 questions tonight, and so therefore there's like 400. And
Start the counter.
88.
Start the counter.
Yes.
Everybody tell Corey.
Okay, Andy Kravis just tweeted us a question. Guess what? We're answering it on the next live panel Sunday at 5 o'clock. Oh, sorry, 6:30 Eastern. So tune in then to find out what Andy Kravis's next question is.
Will we get it right?
Cliffhanger.
We have a grand total of 10 cents in the balance.
No,
So
we
once
don't.
again, for everyone, thank you for tuning in to Jeopardy Live panel on this Monday evening. We'll be back with episode 43 on Sunday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For everyone, I am Andy Saunders. Thank you to Drew, Jerry, Kristin, and Steve. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.